Well, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending where you're watching from. Welcome back here to the Launch Pad. My name's Zach. I'm the host here at the pad, and thank you for joining us today for our live coverage of the Artemis I Green Run Hot Fire test. This is the second attempt. We saw an attempt pretty much 2 months ago to the day. We have had a slight delay in today's broadcast for it. NASA has pushed back their live feed for 30 minutes, but we wanted to jump on here, just let you know that there is that slight delay, but they do have a 2-hour window today. So we will be staying live for that. We're watching the live feeds here. In case they go early, right now we're expecting NASA to start up here in about 23 minutes or so. But while we're sitting here and waiting, if you have any questions, let us know in the comments and we will answer those for you here. And we're just going to talk a little bit about the Artemis I mission, what we're going to be expecting to see today and stuff like that. If you have questions about this or Starship or anything, again, let us know in the chat. Share this out. Let people know that we are live covering this. Hopefully we will see a successful test today. What we're expecting to see today and are hoping will be successful is the final test of part of the Green Run checklist that NASA uses for new rockets. So they're testing the core stage of what will become the new Space Launch System, SLS, which is what will be returning Americans to the surface with the NASA program. It has gone through 7 other tests, and those were doing simulated launch under power, doing turn-on and turn-offs of all the avionics, simulating potential issues or errors, things like that, doing propulsion testing, simulating the launch countdowns and sequences events without the rocket. They did the loading and unloading of all the propellant. There's over 700,000 gallons of cryogenic propellants that are loaded into just the core stage. Now, we don't have the second stage or any of the final components. This is just the main core stage, but this is the part that gets us to orbit. The last part of this big test system and protocol is test number 8, which is what we're going to be hopefully seeing here tonight, and that is firing all 4 RS-25 engines for the full 8 minutes that they would normally need to fire during a launch system. Now, these are not recoverable units. Today, we are not expecting to see a rocket launch. It should not leave the pad. This is built into the pad for it. So no launch today, but exciting test to see. They did this test 2 months ago for it, and they did have an error. They reached ignition, fired all 4 engines. Everything was nominal until 1 minute and 16 seconds into the test, when one of the engines did have a major malfunction, which automated a system shutdown by itself, and all 4 engines were terminated, and the test was canceled for the day for it. So we didn't hear too much more about what was going on. I had heard that there was some things about it just being safer than sorry for what they were doing. The biggest thing is these are old engines. These engines were used in the space shuttles. All 4 engines that are being used today have been flown on multiple space shuttle missions over the years and have been updated. Now, a big thing I like to point out with this is NASA currently only has 16 engines from the space shuttle program. They are working, and they have ordered, I believe it's 16 or 24 new engines, but that is an entirely new system. The company that made those engines completely shut down the manufacturing, so there are going to be new engines. So though we're going to see tests here, and Artemis 1, 2, and 3 will probably go ahead, we will probably see a delay after that, as we will need to have recertification of these new engines. Even though they're going to be similar, they are technically a different new engine. So we're waiting to hear more on that. We probably won't hear about that for a while. Their focus right now is just proving that SLS isn't kind of what everybody talks about as a joke rocket that's taken so long, comparing it to Starship. But it's a big rocket, has a lot of capabilities, and we want to see NASA succeed as well. Big thing that came out today is NASA and SpaceX signed a new agreement talking about safety and sharing of information for further expansions of their programs. So an exciting thing to see there as well. We see Mike in the chat. Has there been errors? If so, what were they? We haven't heard any exact things. We just know their YouTube channel got pushed back by 30 minutes for it. Right now, they do have an hour and 50 minutes left in their test window. And the reason they have a test window, even though they're not launching, is this is such a loud rocket. They've had to put in a noise zone and let everybody know within a certain radius to expect, hey, you might hear a big bang. A big thing most people don't think about with rocket launches and testing is normally when you launch a rocket, sure, it's loud for a minute, but it's going up. So it gets quieter. with this, it's not moving. So this is 8 minutes of solid full thrust of these engines. Now they will be throttling back and forth the thrust, moving the engines around. They're doing a full test as if it was launching, but that noise volume will not change for those 8 minutes. So I believe it's a 60-mile radius. They have notified about the noise that will come from today's test for it. Does NASA delay the launch due to the weather? If they were doing a normal launch, yes. For this, I believe they would, depending on what the weather was. Because the booster is built into a solid base. This is the same base they use for the shuttle and for the Apollo mission. So it's a very old system, but it's proven and it knows how it's working. There's probably some weather they delay. I'm not too sure on that one. But generally speaking, anything with rockets, if there's like lightning and stuff, you don't want to be doing testing just because it can charge for that. For it, we're seeing here in our Discord. That's a great thing. If you're not with us over on a couple different things, so we are live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitch, come on over, join us on YouTube. I'll drop the link in the chat. We don't go live on Twitch and Facebook for everything. We normally do for launches, for some special testing we do, but we have a lot of other content of exclusive interviews, follow-ups, things we do on our YouTube channel that you might not want to miss out. So head on over, join us over here on YouTube, subscribe to us so you don't miss those, and let us know if you have questions there. What I was hearing about was someone in our Discord was just saying same engines with slight upgrades. Like the Falcon 9, it was evolved from the V1 to what we now know as Block 5. Very common in rocket engines to have those variations as they get to their final version, and that's what we're seeing with SLS here. Now, we're hoping that Artemis I has a successful core stage today. Are you going to go live for Space Crew 2? 100% we will, Vince. Absolutely. We try to cover pretty much everything SpaceX as much as we can. Now, if it's like a 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. launch of Starlink, maybe not. But if it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, we try. Type of thing. So absolutely, we cover that. We're looking at covering some of the Soyuz that's coming up as well. We cover Rocket Lab, and then we're covering SLS as well. If you know of any other rocket companies that you would be interested in having us kind of do either a video on or a launch coverage, definitely let us know in the chat or over on our Twitter, TLPN_official. Join us over on Twitter. We'd love to have you there. That's where we tweet out kind of all our late breaking news, rumors, different things we're hearing to stay up to date for that. But absolutely, we'll be live for Crew 2. We do have a friend that is down in Florida. I am actually in Canada. With the borders closed, I can't get down there right now. But we have a friend over near the Cape that when there are launches during the day, he will be trying to, some of the time, be there on site for either photos or videos for us. So we're excited to bring those to you there. If you hop over to our Twitter, you can see a picture from a Starlink launch a couple weeks ago or a week ago. So, yeah, lots of exciting things to come. Right now, we're sitting about 15 minutes away from when we're expecting NASA to go live. Once they go live, I'll let them talk unless they're just rambling, and then I'll come on and ramble and talk about what we're expecting to see. But there's a lot of different variations of the SLS rocket that we're expecting to see depending on the type of payload it's carrying. But the big one, the most important one that people are excited about is the one that's going to be taking us back to the moon. We did see NASA confirm this rough schedule for the next kind of 4 years involving the Boeing Starliner crew missions to the ISS, SpaceX crew missions to the ISS, as well as seeing the Artemis program in there as well. So there are at least 3 missions that are confirmed right now. The third mission is the one where they will actually land on the surface. So Artemis I is just a test. We're hoping to see that within the next year or so. We'll see. NASA's always a little bit slower because they only have one rocket. They can't just blow it up like SpaceX does. They have to be safe and careful and methodical through everything they do because they are a government-funded organization. Artemis II is when we will see the first humans board an SLS rocket, and that will be for a moon flyby mission. And then Artemis III is when they will actually land back onto the surface. With Artemis II, the exciting thing we're going to be seeing is one of the 4 crew members will actually be Canadian, which as a Canadian, I'm really excited to finally see Canada reaching back out to the moon. And then on Artemis III, we will see a woman being one of the 2 people that will be entering the lander and actually descend to the lunar surface. So lots of new milestones, not necessarily historical because we've already been to the moon, but new historical things. First Canadian, first woman, first youngest person to space. A lot of new things coming up here in the next couple of years. So definitely stick here at the launch pad here at the pad. We try to cover everything space, space flight, space engineering in the future of space. And we'd love to just invite you to be here with us. We're working on a new video series where we take kind of a deep dive look into the different aerospace companies, the ones you know and love, and maybe some of the ones you don't. There are a lot of new up-and-coming aerospace companies that are very influential, as well as if you think about all the satellite payloads that are being deployed. We all know about SpaceX and the Falcon 9, but you know about all the other companies that are actually built in to that second stage for the deployment. A lot of interesting information coming out of that. So we're working on that hopefully in the next couple months for you here. Right now, it's all me, myself, and I. So if you live anywhere near a launch pad or are passionate about space and are interested in helping write up scripts, do research, things like that, definitely reach out. We want to build this into a community of not just me, but of many people that know what they're talking about, and we'd love to have you as part of it. Just reading through our Discord here, getting some interesting questions of, what if the first person that lands is like the first of multiple things? That's too much, Marcus. That's too much. We got to do one at a time. But a lot of exciting things coming up here for it. So if you're watching, let us know in the chat where you are watching from, if you have subscribed or not. We're just keeping an eye out here, but right now we are still seeing, we haven't seen any more of a delay at this time for it. So we're still expecting them to go live here in about 10 minutes or so for today's test attempt. Let's keep an eye here. There we go. So a little bit more information. They did start the loading of the cryogenic fuel a couple of hours ago, and we did see about 30 minutes ago they have completed that fueling. It takes 114 trucks to fill the core stage of the SLS rocket. 54 of them carry what's known as LH2, which is liquid hydrogen, and 60 of them carrying LOx, so liquid oxygen, and that is all the propellant needed for it. So it is quite a bit of fuel that they have brought out to the pad. Labor City, Newfoundland. Hello, Mike from Canada. Hello, welcome. It's great to see another Canadian on here. So lots coming up over the next little bit here of what we're expecting to see, but a little bit more about what the test, they're going to dive into it as we wait for the final actual countdown. Now, that's one thing about this. We don't necessarily have a solid countdown clock. Last time when they did the test 2 months ago, we did get occasional updates based on the radio chatter that we were hearing on the stream, but we don't get that little countdown clock in the corner like we normally would for a launch. As this is a test, they can do mini holds or long holds, different things. Is the Space Launch System will bring astronauts to Mars or Moon? So definitely the Moon. It can definitely take payloads to Mars. I'm sure it could take payloads, to Mars and stuff in there, do bigger deployments past Mars, but it won't be, I believe, a human carrier to Mars. They would need a different type of capsule just because of the length of mission. That's where Starship comes up. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Anita. Hi, Zach, from me and my husband, Luke and Inga. Hello, Anita. It's great to see you. If you have any questions, let us know. But there are really 3 things being tested during today's test. So one, obviously, is the rocket engines and testing the actual core stage, which is the one that will fly later in the year, hopefully. But they're also testing all the flight computers. So there's 3 flight computers built into the system. They're testing more than 50 avionic units and testing all the navigation and control systems as well as the flight software. So absolutely everything that's either built into the rocket or is set up at mission control is all being tested. The propulsion system that is controlled by all this computer work is connected by over 18 miles of cable and more than 500 sensors. So there is a lot of computer technology in this rocket. Rockets are very smart now. I mean, everybody kind of makes the joke, and it's not really a joke. There is more technology in my cell phone than what we went to the moon with the first time. So it's not surprising that it takes a lot more tech and a lot more cabling for this test. When all 4 engines ignite, it will produce the 1.6 million pounds of thrust for it. And we are hoping that that will run for the full 8 minutes. That is what is needed to go through all the testing procedures of the full thrust, throttling back each engine, gimbaling the engines, and everything there. Because this is a new part of a new rocket, that is why they're going through this type of test stand, in hopes to ensure that when they do that first test launch, though it will be unmanned, it be successful. NASA goes in the more safe, methodical route. SpaceX goes, let's blow it up and learn. Different companies, one's privately funded, one's governmentally funded. So that is why for it. But we're waiting to see. The largest portion of the rocket is the bottom kind of 2/3 of it. That's what's holding the LH2, or the liquid hydrogen. And then the top about 25% of the rocket is holding the LOx, or the liquid oxygen, for today's attempt. We're just refreshing here to make sure we don't see any new updates from NASA. Doesn't look like they are live as of yet, but we should be seeing them here in just a couple of minutes. Hello, Gerard from Northern Ireland. Hello, Vince from Pennsylvania. Thanks so much. Oh, Mark, thank you so much. That's a great support here. New learning as we go, working on the studio. We have something new that's going to be going on that shelf here in a couple of weeks that we're excited for you to see. If you're in our Discord, you know what it is. But we're excited for that to be on its way here shortly. From down in the States, as well as some more models that we're going to be talking about with one of our partners of the channel here in the next few month or so. Hopefully, we'll get the first ones in studio as well. Again, if you are new, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the host here at the Launchpad. And yeah, here at the pad, you're here watching our live coverage of the Artemis I hot fire test. We'll bring it up on screen once they're live so you actually know what we're talking about and what they're testing. But we're seeing just a slight delay of about 30 minutes for today's test. And this is really the world's largest rocket. That is what they are testing. Over 700,000 gallons of fuel have been loaded in preparations for today's 8-minute test. So we'll wait and see that they have a successful test. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat. Again, if you do live near a launch pad and are often taking pictures and want to share them out, let us know. We'd love to retweet you or tweet for you your amazing work. We want to support you in what you're doing. So feel free to drop us a line over on Twitter or Facebook or even in the chat here, and I'll follow up with you a little bit later after today's launch attempt. I'm just going to see. I'm going to actually ask this. If anyone in our Discord remembers what 4 engines we're testing with today, I know I had it before, but I'm not seeing it here. All 4 engines that we're testing are previously flown engines that have had some upgrades done to them. But there was quite a few historical ones. There was, I believe, the last shuttle. There was one of, I believe, Commander Glenn's shuttle missions. There was the Hubble mission. So very variation of age of engines they're using. NASA currently has 16 of the RS-25 engines that they have in storage. So this is 4 of them, which means they've got 3 more sets before they're transitioning and will be using new ones here. Now I'm going to bring up NASA's secondary feed. They're not showing the exact test yet, but they are showing some of the insides of SLS. So we're going to bring that up here and switch this over just so it's a little easier to see. They're showing some of the construction of SLS when they were building it here. So I'll take this down so you can see what they're saying. So very close-up look at the different rings that were being tested, the actual tanks that are in there, because there are multiple tanks just in this one stage. And we'll hopefully be seeing this testing of the second stages and stuff here shortly. Earlier today, they were showing some of the Orion capsule that they will be using for it. So quite a large tank when you look at it. But going back to looking what like the Apollo missions did, a very similar size kind of look of it. Can I donate my stimulus to this channel, and how do I do that? Oh, wow, Mark. That's very generous of you. Thank you. If you would like to, why don't you, let me double check one thing. Do you have Twitter, Mark? Can you just like send us a DM on Twitter? That would be probably the best way. I don't want your private information getting shared out on a channel. So yeah, they're showing some other things that they've been doing. 2021's been quite the year for NASA with the launch and then the landing and now deployment of Perseverance. See if they show the picture of it. My name's actually on it, as long as about 10 million others of you as well. But really fascinating to see these really high definition, clear pictures from the lunar surface, as well as it's starting to move, and preparations are getting ready to deploy the Ingenuity helicopter for it. If you head over to our Twitter, we retweeted out the sound that it's playing here, that you can hear two things. You can hear lasers being deployed from the rover itself, testing some of the rocks around it, as well as you can hear wind. Percy's doing well, Gerard. It is alive and well, which is great to hear. She moved a fair amount actually already, doing some early testing the grounds, seeing which way they want to go. Right now, there are two kind of paths to an endpoint that they want to go to that they are still deciding which way to go. I think the next thing they're going to be doing first is going to be doing the testing of that helicopter, just because they don't know how that would age. And once they deploy it down on the ground, it doesn't go back into Percy. It is deployed, and they'll do those tests probably quite rapidly. So you can see here actually on the screen, this is the stage that's being tested today, being loaded into the test stand. Those are those 4 RS-25 engines for it. And you also saw just before that they are have built the 2 solid rocket boosters for the SLS program. What's really interesting about that is those solid rocket boosters generally can only last about a year once they're stacked. So it really does mean SLS is on the clock. We tweeted that probably over a month and a half ago now. They started the stacking. So there's probably just over about 10 and a half months left in the lifespan of those. And once they do that, they would have to redo those solid rocket boosters. So SLS is definitely really pushing forward to get that Artemis I launch done by the end of 2021. Which so far to everything seems to be good. We're just waiting to see any updates here from NASA on if there's any more delays. So far, their stream just got pushed another 15 minutes. So we are seeing some subtle delays here. We're waiting to see what that will mean for the attempt today. But if they do have an issue, and are unable to do a test launch, ignition test today, they do have another opportunity that they can file for there. So we'll just pull that up on screen. So we're about 20 minutes here, 15 minutes. So we're not too sure why. They haven't tweeted anything as of yet on weather, but we're waiting to see what is happening with that. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat. Did they drop a 2-ton battery from the ISS? We're going to land. 2-ton battery from the ISS. We're not 2-ton battery. I think, is that what they deployed from the ground? I know they deployed a large. I haven't actually followed the ISS that closely for about a week or two. Yes. Yes, this is. I knew what they had done. I didn't realize it was batteries. Yeah, so the ISS threw away 2.9 tons of batteries. It is the most expensive piece of space trash now in history. It was released from the Canadarm2, which we are working on a video to go a little bit deeper into the Canadarm systems. Canadarm1 was on the space shuttle. Canadarm2 was on the International Space Station, and Canadarm3 is going to be on the Gateway Station. So there, currently it's traveling at 4.8 miles a second. It's the heaviest and most expensive piece of garbage ever jettisoned from the International Space Station. And it will stay in low Earth orbit for the next 2 to 4 years before it starts to enter our atmosphere. So it will slowly orbit and lower itself until eventually it hits our atmosphere. And I would assume just explode in the atmosphere for it. But yeah, it's going to be up there for 2 to 4 years. Expensive piece of space junk. I'll see if I can find it on the Stuff in Space map maybe later today or during one of our Kerbal streams over on Discord. We can try to take a look and follow that for it. The last thing that was like the largest piece deployed from the space station was the early ammonia servicing system that was jettisoned by astronaut Clay Anderson during the STS-118 mission in 2007. So quite a long thing. It says there is no threat to humanity of this engine or of these batteries, this payload of batteries, but it is being tracked by the U.S. Space Command should there be any issues. It's also tracked and has radar and stuff, so other rockets that are launching know where it is. So no one's going to crash into it there. But this is them getting ready for these new 4 solar panels. Another video we're working on of this upgrade that we'll be seeing happening over this year during the the upgrades they're doing to have the International Space Station last quite a bit longer for it here. Let me see here. If you hear beeping, that's our Discord. So if you are on our Discord, head over to YouTube. In the description is a link to our Discord. Our Discord's free. We are working on launching a Patreon here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, but we're always going to have a large portion of our Patreon free for everyone to be involved with because we want to build this community with all of you here for it. So we're waiting to have NASA go live here in about 10 minutes or so. Mark, I'm not sure if I got a chance here to connect with you. I'll try to send you a direct message if that works. And we will go from there and figure something out if that is what you are interested in doing. We appreciate any support. We are entirely viewer funded. This is a something I love doing. Have enjoyed space for many, many years and excited to get to do this. We've got a bunch of interviews we're working on. If there is someone you want us to interview, let me know about that in the chat. Astronaut, CEO, different things there. We've recently sat down with Jared Isaacman, the commander of Inspiration 4, a number of the competitors for Inspiration 4, and we have confirmed that we will be sitting down with the full crew once they are announced here in the next couple of weeks. We'll hopefully be sitting down with them in the next month or so to talk with the entire first ever all-civilian crew to go to space. Now, I always say that, and I preface this with, we do know Challenger was going to have civilians on it. Obviously, what happened to Challenger happened, and we never want to forget their sacrifice that they did to the space program. But focusing on Inspiration 4, this will be the first all 100% civilian mission to space. So we're really excited to be sitting down with them, being kind of on their short list of people that have access, and we'll be following that mission all the way through the launch, through the mission, and to landing. And we're hoping to be on the ground possibly for the launch as well. So lots of things happening there. I'll always pop this up here. If you have a question, let us know in the chat. Drop it in with hashtag AskTLP just so I don't miss it if you do have one. And share the broadcast out to let us know. Let people know that we're live, where you're watching from, who you're watching with, and we'll go from there. I'm going to take a very quick break here. I'm going to be back in just a couple of minutes. We're going to watch this astronaut fall over or dance on the moon. And I will be right back here in just a couple minutes. Welcome here to the launch pad. You're watching our live coverage of the Artemis I Center Core Stage Green Run Hot Fire Test. And we're expecting to have NASA go live here in about 10 minutes. So I'll be right back. So that is the screen we've been waiting for. They had yet to put that up there. So looks like they are going to be proceeding with going live here in about 4 minutes from now. Lots of people tuning in, waiting on all the different feeds to watch. Over 1 million people viewed the test last time of the first hot fire test. So we're excited to see how many tune in today. But before we get started, make sure you hit the like on the video and share it out. Let people know that we're live. Share it onto some Facebook pages if you're part of groups or anything that are space oriented. Let them know that we are really seeing the testing. We've got 2 major rockets testing right now, and we probably won't live through this again. Starship and SLS are probably going to be the 2 big rockets of our lifetime. We might see some sort of rocket that get developed in orbit, but this is going to be what's setting the steps and the foundation for what will be the next the space race and the foundation we're building in orbit on the moon and on Mars. So definitely something people want to see. Not that way they don't say, oh, 20 years from now, oh yeah, I didn't watch that. Didn't know about it. Let them know about it. This is something you're going to want to watch. And if you can't watch it right now, come on back. We leave our feeds up. We'll also upload a short and condensed version just showing the test later today as well. For it, but everything is proceeding there. We're hearing from some people on the ground that it is extremely windy right now, very similar to what it's like in Boca Chica. So that is probably what maybe some of the delays were, but a lot of people are very happy about that because it means we probably have a very clear view into the rocket area rather than that cloud kind of just sitting next to it. So definitely make sure that you are tuning in here. We're about 3 minutes till they go live. We're estimating probably about 30 minutes until the actual ignition of the 4 RS-25 engines, and we will go from there. Again, if you have any questions, let us know in the chat as we are progressing through this stream here. We're going to just briefly take the stream down here in a moment and pull up the official stream from the NASA feed. And there we go. We've got the official feed up here, and it says it is waiting for NASA, which means they're activating everything over on their end. And once they bring that feed up live here, we will bring that full screen and listen in to what they are saying. But everything looks like it is proceeding for a test here today of the Artemis I rocket. Again, what we're expecting to see here is a slow count up to the actual ignition, where we will see an 8-minute test where it will burn over 700,000 gallons of propellant, as well as it'll do some throttling maneuvers, some gimbling maneuvers as well. So we're waiting to see. Last time it got to 1 minute 16 seconds, so we're hoping we'll see it past that moment. And that was right when they started to do some throttling and gimbling for it. So the first initial ignition was good. Now, they did say that error that occurred, if it had happened, SLS still would have been able to continue a flight should that have been a flight, or if it was carrying passengers or anything or cargo, that it would have still reached orbit without an issue. It was just a extra safety measure that they had in place. So we're just waiting for NASA to bring up their feed here. At the meantime, while that is also happening, we are now getting reports as well from Boca Chica that the Super Heavy booster BN1 is being stacked.
start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're looking at the historic B-Test complex at NASA's Stennis Space Center, where we're about to do a second Green Run hot fire test, firing up the core stage of our new Space Launch System rocket. Good afternoon. I'm Lee D'Angelo. This stage we're testing today will be part of the rocket, which will soon launch from NASA's Kennedy Space Center on the Artemis I mission. That launch will send an uncrewed Orion spacecraft beyond the moon and back to Earth. It's the first flight of the Artemis program, which will return American astronauts to the moon and pave the way for exploration of Mars. The Space Launch System will be the most powerful rocket in the world and is the only rocket that can send the Orion spacecraft, astronauts, and supplies safely beyond the moon in one launch. Now, we first tested this core stage on January 16th. That marked a major milestone, firing all 4 RS-25 engines together for the first time for about a minute. However, it ended earlier than planned, so NASA and Boeing decided to do a second test. Teams have been working hard to get to this point, and the test countdown actually started a couple of days ago. Here to update us on where things stand is NASA Public Affairs Officer Catherine Hamilton and Headquarters Green Run Manager Bill Robel in one of our test control centers here. Catherine?
Thanks, Lee. We're inside a secondary test complex outside of the control room, and we're listening in to provide you updates as the team progresses through their steps for this operation. We believe we're within about 45 minutes of the hot fire. The team actually started 2 days ago powering up the avionics on March 16th, and they checked out all the systems that they had tested on previous tests. Earlier this morning, they conducted a go-no-go poll to proceed into the test, and I have Bill Robel here with me to tell us a little bit more. Bill, can you tell us about how the operations have progressed today?
Yeah, sure will. So at this point, we've been in kind of replenish mode for both the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. We've got, at this point, 540,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen on board and another 200,000 gallons of liquid oxygen on board. And they're in the conditioning process right now, where we're trying to get that temperature down as low as we can, get it within the start box. And we're also doing the same thing on the engine side of things. And what's important about all of this is that, this timeline that we're going through here will help inform the operations that'll take place down at Kennedy Space Center, where not only do they have these things to worry about, but then they've also got to do the things where they're getting people on board and taking care of all the other extraneous things that they have to do down there. So for us here, right, we've also been monitoring things like the battery charging. They're basically up to speed at this point. And then we've got the redundant inertial navigation unit wet checkout, which is basically mounted up in the LOx dome area. And so they're looking to see how it behaves relative to the low temperatures that we're seeing now in that compartment. And so at this point too, the teams are basically looking at all their data, making sure that their systems are where they're supposed to be and ready to go for proceeding into the terminal account.
Thanks, Bill. And can you tell us a bit how the timeline is different for today's test than for a launch, and how is determining the time of the hot fire different from setting the time for a launch?
Yeah, so for us, it's actually we're in a pretty good spot. We're trying to at this point maximize the amount of commodities that we've got here in the test facility. So we're playing a little bit of a game where we've got crews that have been on for a number of hours, and at 12 hours roughly, they'll time out. We want to make sure that we don't have to end the operation any earlier than that, so we're really trying to maximize that. So they're in the process of working that with the nitrogen and helium, liquid oxygen, and liquid hydrogen. The other part of it is, right, the beauty of us is we're in a test. We're not going anywhere today, and so we don't have a destination. Our destination is right here. And so the difference right at Kennedy is they've got, the orbital mechanics, their destination as to where they're going to go. And so they have to work basically all those details in to their exact launch window. Our launch window is basically when we start the test, and that doesn't matter too much today. But they do have a, they've got a real time hack that they have to hit. So they'll have built-in holds into their process and procedures down there, and that'll inform them kind of how they move through the next steps. We just are fortunate we don't have to worry about that today.
Great, thanks. So that means that we don't have a specific hot fire target time right now at this moment, but we'll keep listening in and we'll provide updates. We do know that the test remains to be projected within the test window, and we believe we're within about 45 minutes. And so we'll continue to listen in here, and I'll turn it back to Lee.
Thanks, Catherine and Bill. And we will come back to you in just a few minutes, like you said, to take us all the way to the test, or sooner if you have any updates for us. We will be listening in, and I'll head right back to you if you do. Now, if you are just joining us, welcome. We're live at NASA's Stennis Space Center in Mississippi, and we're following the second Green Run hot fire test of the Space Launch System rocket's core stage. The core stage is the center core of the rocket that includes 2 propellant tanks and 4 RS-25 engines, miles of cables, all of the avionics, electronics, computers, the brains of the rocket, and all of the plumbing that work together to launch the rocket during the first 8 minutes of the mission. The green in Green Run refers to new, untested rocket hardware. So this is a comprehensive series of tests of all the core stage hardware for the SLS rocket to demonstrate it's ready for launch, culminating with today's hot fire. The core stage will power every SLS mission. So this test is important not just for Artemis I, but for all future SLS launches as well. Those RS-25 engines are expected to fire up shortly here at Stennis Space Center. Before that happens, let's get a closer look at the Space Launch System rocket.
So I'm going to cut in here just really quickly, a few things we heard while they were doing there. A couple things. One, the crew that has been currently functioning, working, getting everything ready is coming up on that 12-hour period where they actually time out. So they are keeping an eye on that. Also, we did hear that they were about 45 minutes away from when they were estimating that T0 to be. So that's currently on your screen there. That is subject to change, but that is the first kind of figure that we have. Given that, they've got 27 minutes of hold that they can do during this kind of lead-up period, which we did see last time. Last time they went live for about 2 hours prior to the actual, about hour 45 minutes prior to the actual ignition for it. But we're seeing a really great breakdown of what SLS will look like, but what we're testing today. And that's this part that's now on your screen here. So we're going to listen back in. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments. We'll answer those. And they are diving a little deeper in here. So let's take a look.
Of liquid hydrogen and 196,000 gallons of liquid oxygen. This is the world's largest core stage ever built. The core stage for Artemis I fires up for the first time at NASA's historic B-2 test stand.
The core stage was designed by NASA's SLS program at our Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Then built by lead contractor Boeing, using state-of-the-art manufacturing just down the road at NASA's Michoud Assembly Facility in my hometown, New Orleans. It includes engines manufactured by Aerojet Rocketdyne, with contributions from more than 1,100 large and small businesses in 44 states. It was shipped up here to Stennis on the Pegasus barge in January of last year, and then installed on the B-2 test stand where you see it here today. Engineers then began activating the stage's components one by one and taking it through the series of tests that make up the Green Run over the past year. Each test built upon the previous one and added a little more complexity. So today's hot fire builds on all of that work for a full test of the entire integrated system that will simulate all parts of the core stage working together during launch. Today's test will take us from extreme cold to extreme hot as the team loads cryogenic or super cold propellants into the fuel tanks and then fires up the engines to drain the propellant from the tanks to simulate launch. Now, the hottest part of the test today will be those 4 RS-25 engines at the bottom of the core stage. These RS-25s we are testing today are repurposed from the shuttle program. These 4 engines flew on some pretty iconic shuttle missions, including one of the Hubble Space Telescope's servicing missions, the historic return to space of Mercury astronaut and Senator John Glenn, 6 flights to the space station, and the final shuttle space mission in 2011. So you can trace a direct line from that final shuttle flight to the first flight of SLS. We've worked with our partners at Aerojet Rocketdyne to upgrade the 16 shuttle main engines, which will power the first 4 Artemis flights. And now we're building 24 new engines using 3D printing and other manufacturing innovations to reduce cost, complexity, and manufacturing time. Of course, all of this work is building towards that Artemis I launch from Kennedy Space Center later this year. Here's a closer look at that mission and how it paves the way for future exploration beyond.
3, 2, 1, 0. Mission liftoff.
Artemis I will lift off from Launch Pad 39B at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida with 8.8 million pounds of thrust, provided by the most powerful rocket in the world, our Space Launch System rocket, or SLS. The uncrewed flight will be the first integrated test of SLS, our new Orion spacecraft, and exploration ground systems at Kennedy. Artemis I will send Orion beyond the moon, 280,000 miles from Earth, farther than any human spacecraft has ever flown.
This is not NASA doing this. This is the United States of America doing this program, the Artemis program, and there are companies all across our country that have a part in it, so there is kind of this wave of excitement being generated just by saying, we're going back to the moon.
After the upper stage of the rocket separates from Orion, the upper stage will deploy small satellites over several days to perform science experiments and technology demonstrations. Orion will make its multi-day outbound trip to the moon, propelled by a service module provided by the European Space Agency. Engineers will test Orion's systems on the way to the moon. Then, Orion will fly about 60 miles above the lunar surface, using the moon's gravity and engines on the service module to enter a lunar orbit. After about a month and a total distance of over 1 million miles, Orion will return home, faster and hotter than any spacecraft has before. A primary goal of Artemis I, ensure Orion safely returns to Earth before we fly with humans. When we do, we'll build our capability for sustainable lunar exploration, preparing us for missions farther into the solar system.
Initially, what we'd like to do is start establishing a presence on the moon. So we're going to establish going back there on a regular basis, and then we'll end up setting up Gateway, and we would launch to the Gateway, and from Gateway land on the surface of the moon.
We are there for weeks, months on end. And there we're going to be able to test out all the hardware and the habitats and the hatches and the suits and the rovers that'll allow us to prove out those technologies. The moon will lead the way to Mars, and we should be there within the next couple of decades.
Just amazing. And now we are going to hand things over to Catherine and Bill again in the control center. Catherine?
Thanks, Lee. We are in the secondary test control and outside the control room here listening in so that we can provide you updates. Bill, can you give us an update on how things are progressing?
Yeah, so they're in the process now of going through the final checks. Everything's really nicely going really great today. So everything's right on schedule, nominal. They're trying to do this thing what they call right now is jump the clock. We're just trying to work it a little bit ahead. So they're in the process of resetting the clock and making sure that when they get to that 10-minute point that it doesn't continue to count down, because that's where they have to go with that pole well ahead of that. So they're working on setting that stuff up right now.
All right, so we'll continue to stand by and listen and provide updates. And as Lee mentioned earlier, the team previously conducted a hot fire test in January. The engines did shut down earlier than planned during that test, but the January 16th test successfully completed several operations for the first time. They were able to transition to the automated launch sequence operated by the core stage flight computer and the green run test software. They completed the terminal countdown sequence that is like the launch countdown. They also pressurized the tanks and delivered the propellant to the engines and demonstrated the performance of the core stage as main propulsion system, firing the engines at 109% power, and they operated the thrust vector control system that steers the engines. So it's a smooth countdown so far today, and we'll keep standing by. We'll take a pause for a moment, and we'll check back in just a few minutes.
So I'm going to cut in here, and we'll keep this live up, and we'll jump back in next time we hear something there, as they'll probably go into doing some more kind of almost commercial promos for SLS. Great question from Patty. Just came in the chat, attempting a launch today. We're attempting a launch. So what we're going to be doing is an attempt at an 8-minute launch. Let me pull this down. What are they saying? Standing by for a hot fire time. Okay. So they are still working towards getting that time there lined up on when they think that they will be doing the attempt. At this time, what we're going to do is we'll just switch over to, I think, this view. There we go. While we're waiting for them to finalize what they're looking at. But at this time, we're just waiting for that hot fire test. But today what they're doing is called a green run hot fire test, Patty, which means they're not actually going to launch from the test stand, but they will be firing all 4 of the RS-25 engines for the full 8 minutes they would normally launch during a flight. They're going to be testing the throttling, the gimbaling. They've tested them one at a time. They've only once turned all 4 on, and that was 2 months ago when they did the first hot fire run test. It got 1 minute, 16 seconds into the test and did have to have an abort due to some errors. But at this time, they are ready to go for another attempt, and that's what we're currently waiting on here. We are having that live audio, kind of just some hissing from the ground there. We are working for future tests to be able to have some live feeds that are not the NASA feed from some other angles on the ground. But yeah, a little bit more about today's attempt. So today, they're not only testing that core stage, as they kind of said, they're testing quite a number of different parts of what the SLS rocket is. They're going to be testing the 3 different flight computers, more than 50 different avionic units, the navigation and control systems, the flight software that controls the first 8 minutes of the flight. The 2 tanks that are built into the center core stage contain more than 700,000 gallons of cryogenic fuel. It contains liquid hydrogen, so LH2, in kind of the bottom 2/3 of the tank, and then the top kind of quarter of the tank holds LOx, so liquid oxygen. The reason they call it the green run test and why we're green here, green means new or new rocket hardware. Green run means the first test of new flight hardware. So that's why this is a green run flight test. This test stand has been used for decades for many of the previous vehicles from NASA. The propulsion system built into the SLS core here contains over 18 miles of cables and over 500 sensors and systems to control the feed and the complex systems of the 4 RS-25 engines. When they fire all at the same time, we are going to be witnessing 1.6 million pounds of thrust, and they'll be firing for a total of 8 minutes. People are allowed pretty close to the pad. They've been able to set up cameras actually only a couple miles down the road. Obviously, you do have to have hearing protection and different things, but they've actually had to put in a 60-mile sound warning around this. When launches normally go, you think of a launch, the rocket goes up and the sound slowly gets quieter. With this test, it's a full 8 minutes at full thrust, the entire 8 minutes. So that's a lot louder, which is why normally you don't see these large radiuses around launch pads get noise warnings. They'll get a launch warning, but not a noise warning. This can cause damage to windows and glass in a very close distance, but it is a very loud rumble that they want people to be aware of as they are testing. Similar to what you see in McGregor, Texas, with all the testing of SpaceX. People that live in the area just know it's a rocket test for it here. We're going to thank you for a comment and remove that one, and we're going to just keep moving along. But yeah, we're just waiting for that test time. Originally, they had been targeting, it sounded like 2:33 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Yes, we're in daylight time. Try to remember that, which is 4:33 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, but they did just confirm that they're trying to, what they do is called jump the clock. Everything's ready, the rocket's fueled. We have now seen a lot more venting start up on the rocket itself, so we're currently awaiting to see them do that test here. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat. It can be about SLS, about the future.
Stand that you're seeing there is a dual position vertical firing facility with the B1 side equipped for single engine tests and the B2 side designed for rocket stages. The stand is anchored to the ground with 144 feet of steel and concrete. We talked a little bit about the history of the RS-25 engines, and the B2 stand, which is where the SLS core stage is secured now, also has quite a bit of history. It was used in the 1960s to test Saturn V rocket stages that carried humans to the moon during the Apollo program, and the Space Shuttle main propulsion test article, consisting of an external tank and 3 main engines together with a simulated orbiter, was also tested on the B2 stand. The B2 stand has been modified to test the SLS core stage for the Artemis program that will return humans to the moon, with a new steel superstructure added for testing the SLS core stage. The stand is now almost 350 feet high, ranking it as one of the tallest structures in the state of Mississippi.
So we'll just keep jumping back when anytime they are saying something. She just said an interesting part there. This structure is connected to the ground for 114 feet. That is over 10 and a half stories straight down with steel to hold it in. Because you have to remember, this rocket, when it fires, is going to be producing 1.6 million pounds of thrust going up. So this structure has to be very strong to be able to hold that down for it. You can sort of see in this shot right now, there's kind of 2 white pillars that are going straight down on the side closer to us. Those are possibly the next solid boosters, or test they're fake solid boosters to test the engines. We can listen in here.
The RS-25 engines is about the size of a compact car if the engine were turned on its side. Standing up, they are each 14 feet tall and 8 feet in diameter. They each weigh about 8,000 pounds. The RS-25 is designed to operate in extreme temperatures from negative 423 degrees Fahrenheit to 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And as Lee mentioned, today's test will go from extreme cold to extreme hot. When the hot gases exit the RS-25's nozzle, they travel at 13 times the speed of sound, which is fast enough to travel from Los Angeles to New York City in about 15 minutes. The core stage itself stands 212 feet tall and at a diameter of 27.6 feet and weighs about 2.3 million pounds when loaded with propellants.
So kind of just like us, their hosts are sitting and waiting for updates from the mission control. This is very much like what we see with Starship, where it's, oh, what's going on? The pad's clear, and we wait for 8 hours, and then they open the pad. Different things. This is a test. They want to make sure they're doing it right. With SpaceX, you know, the saying is you want to see scrubs, not ruds, type of thing. Very much the same here. We want to see them have a successful test, and if that means delaying something, that is important. But at this time, we're not hearing about any delays. In fact, we had heard them trying to jump the clock. That was about 15 minutes ago. Right now, we are 23 minutes away from the first estimated T0 that we had heard from them when they first went live. But we're seeing those helicopter and drone shots of around the facility. You can see the flare stack is good. You can see the venting coming from the base there. Where you see that white venting coming out of the bottom left side of the stand there, that is where we're going to see that big, powerful thrust come out in the large cloud. They also will have some cameras in there so we can see the engines with ignition and some different maneuvers as well. So we'll have a very good look inside of what things are doing. While we're waiting there, taking a look in at their mission control, This is at the Stennis Space Center, the John C. Stennis Space Center, where they are testing it. This is one of their mission control test facilities for it. You can see it takes a lot of people to get it working. Hello, the Space Tunnel, welcome. Takes a lot of people to have everything up and running and functional. You can see computers on computers and those very thick binders of all the different steps for it. You can also see through that back window, you can kind of peer into, there's a secondary room there for it, and everybody's on headset. So everybody is in communication at the same point and working for that same direction and mission. Now we are hearing a little bit of the feed from in there.
So the next major milestone coming up will be the poll for the terminal count. It's the last 10 minutes of the countdown. Bill, can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect to hear during the terminal count?
Yeah, so just ahead of terminal count, we'll hopefully get that call. They'll do a poll, which is all the members of the team basically getting their go for going into that terminal count sequencer. And then once we actually get into it, there's at least 500 different events that take place in that last 10 minutes. So I'll not go through each one of those with you, but there are some pretty good ones, I think, that highlight, kind of what the major ones should be or are. We've got to terminate the hydrogen replenish, and then we've also got to go into the hydrogen tank pre-press operations, which is where they'll pressurize the hydrogen tank. It'll start doing that on its own as well. Initiate ground helium spin start supply to the CAPUs. So initially, when the CAPUs come up, they'll be running off of the helium supply in the stand, and then it'll switch over to the engines when they come up as part of the plus count.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the CAPUs are?
Yeah, so that's the core stage auxiliary power units. They're variants of the ones that were flown on shuttle. The difference is that where those were hydrogen powered, these are basically run off inert gas and then into hydrogen off of the engines when they get into the plus count. So it's basically it's basically a turbine system that spins a pump, and that pump then in turn pressurizes the oil in that system. And through a series of valves and commands, they can then go ahead and actuate the actuators that are mounted to each of the engines in pitch and yaw. After that, we'll get into liquid oxygen terminate, and liquid oxygen replenish will stop that operation. And then we'll go into CAPU starts, and that's where each one of those core stage auxiliary power units would be powered up. And that takes, on the order of about 30 seconds to bring each one of those units up. They're done individually. And then they basically move into transitioning into the LOx tank pressurization operations. They do a TVC gimbal profile on helium, so that's actually something different that you won't see in the plus count. In other words, we do a lot of actuation of the TVC system in that, but we don't move it as far because of the limits we've got in the stand for how far you're moving it relative to having the engines burning at that time. So in the pre-count, we'll basically get the full movement, the full gimbal, full displacement, and then once they get into the plus count, they will not do that, but they'll do some other things. And then after that's complete, they'll basically bring the actuators into their null positions. Basically, they'll go ahead and make sure the engines are ready to go ahead and start. They will then transition the core stage to internal power. They do have, with the redundant inertial navigation unit, they've got the gyro compass alignment that they'll finish up. And that's when we get into the next big sequence, which is the go for the automated launch sequencer, and that'll start roughly at 33 seconds. So that's kind of the big steps to take.
So I'm going to cut in here. You can see some of these cameras. These are some of the future astronauts that hope to fly on Artemis, as well as you can see all the crowd and the media that has gathered just a few miles down the road to witness and feel this test in person from it. But they had a couple of the NASA jets fly in earlier this afternoon to be able to witness this in person. but it looks like everything is still proceeding. We're waiting for that time. Once we hear that kind of go, no go, we know we're at about 10 minutes. And then the big amount of calls that we'll hear that are quite rapidly are at T-minus 5 minutes and counting, and they will become quite frequently here. So we're still listening in to their host and to their mission control to hear any updates about the attempt today, but everything's still proceeding. Right now we are about 15 minutes away, 16 minutes away from when we had expected the test to be able to take place according to what they had first said when they went live, but we're still awaiting to hear an update on that. Again, if you have any questions, let us know in the chat. Can be related to SLS, Artemis, the moon, different things there about the new agreement between NASA and SpaceX. We're going to be going through a lot of things. We've got a 3-week update of the Launchpad news coming out early next week on the Monday. A lot of cover. We've got Starship, Starlink, SLS, Rocket Lab with their Electron and their Neutron rocket. We're going to have the SLS test, the future of Artemis, Orion, a lot of different things. So make sure you subscribe to us over on YouTube so you don't miss when we go live with our will be weekly Launchpad news updates, as well as breaking news updates. We're going to start just doing, quick update videos as late and breaking news comes around. If you're joining us over on Facebook or on Twitch, I'm going to drop in the chat here a link to our YouTube, make it a little easier for you. Join us over here. Hit the like and subscribe button so you never miss a new video. We go live on Facebook for big tests like this, as well as some of our Starship testing, but all of our interviews and everything are exclusively on our YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those. That's what we'll say with that. And we're going to just keep here. We're just going to listen in for the next couple of minutes until we have any more updates from them. And we hear that T-minus 10-minute go, no go for the final preparations. Here you can see those white tanks there. That's for the testing of the the single engines at a time, which we saw over the course of the last year. But that big orange tank has been in this stand for over a year now, awaiting for this big test here today. If you're just joining us, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the host here at the Launchpad. Here at the Launchpad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space. And you're watching our live coverage of the NASA Space Launch System, SLS, with their hot fire green run test of the core stage. This is the second attempt at testing this stage for an 8-minute test to simulate what the first stage would have to do prior to separation for the Artemis program. We are the Artemis generation. We have the Apollo generation, and now we're the Artemis generation. And we are going back to the moon and soon to Mars as well. And this is one of those final stepping stones until we start seeing orbital launch tests of the Space Launch System. If you're new, let us know where you're watching from, who you're watching with. I know we saw people from all over the world earlier. We had Pennsylvania, Northern Ireland, we've got Florida, we've got Newfoundland, we've got Alberta for myself, we've got England, lots of different people all over the world. We are thrilled to have you here with us. Just waiting for an update from their mission control on what today countdown will be, as they were trying to jump the clock. But at this point, I'm not sure they're going to be able to jump it by more than maybe a couple of minutes, because if we hear anything in the next 4 minutes, they're going to be still on that same timeline they were when we first joined. So I'm going to take a quick break. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat, and I will be right back.
as they basically get through that part of it, we'll hear the basically the engines will come up to 109% thrust level, and then we'll go into the first pull at the gimbal profile. So I think what we should do at this point is switch over, if we can, to pick that part of it up.
All right, let's listen in to the poll.
That's the correct time pack as the sequencer steps through there. Reminder to everybody, after we get past 557 and after we terminate LH2 system securing, we only have 2 minutes 35 seconds of full time before we have to recycle pack. Also, another reminder to everybody, when we do the switch to internal power, we will get the Christmas tree effect on the avionics screen. So that is normal, that is to be expected. So just remind everybody that we will get that Christmas tree effect once we go into internal power. All right, sequencer, on your command, let's go ahead and initiate the terminal count sequencer for substep alpha and record the UTC time, please. Copy.
Okay. T-count has resumed.
And give us a UTC real quick, please.
20, 2712.
Copy, 077, 20, 2712.
You copy?
You are currently listening into here at the launch pad our live coverage of the SLS test of the center core. My name's Zach. I'm the host here at the launch pad. Thank you all for joining us. Things are really getting spooled up here as we are currently awaiting the go, no go poll. They have just done some of the preparations to start the terminal count, and we're just waiting for that final. And there we go. T-minus 9 minutes on the clock. So we are targeting a 2:37 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time.
Right, it sounds like we actually missed the poll, so we are in the terminal count sequence now, and we are standing by and listening as they progress through their steps.
So we will just jump in and out as we hear things from them, as at the T-minus 5 minute mark, things will start really picking up on the comms. But we are currently just getting this countdown clock up here for you guys. There we go. So we are currently about 6.5, 7 minutes away from that T0 time of today. There's the 8 minutes on the clock. So today they are testing the center core of the SLS, Space Launch System rocket. They're also testing 3 flight computers, more than 50 avionic units, the navigation and control systems, the flight software control for the first 8 minutes of flight, and the 2 tanks are fully fueled with 700,000 gallons of cryogenically cold fuel. The 2/3 of the rocket holds liquid hydrogen, and the other about quarter holds liquid oxygen. There are over 18 miles of cables and over 500 sensors and systems that have been installed on this rocket for this test of the 4 RS-25 engines. All 4 are previously flown multiple time engines, and at ignition and through this test, we will be witnessing 1.6 million pounds of thrust coming from this engine. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat. And there's 7 minutes.
Oh, that's your order says to continue.
Thank you to Raymond for catching that time difference on our label there.
And we're about 6.5 minutes away from hot fire right now.
I'll just jump on here for just a quick moment to say hello. Welcome to all of you. My name's Zach. I'm the host here at the launch pad.
6 minutes, starting LH2 securing.
There's 6 minutes. Things are going to get spooled up here quite quickly. If you're new, make sure to like us and follow us on Facebook. If you're watching over on Facebook or on Twitch, come on, join us over on YouTube and subscribe. That's where all of our content comes out. We do a bunch of exclusive interviews and more that you might be interested in. So we invite you. I know you've probably got hundreds of subscribers, but what's one more? Hit the subscribe button, and we are going to zoom in here and listen in. We're going to go full screen for the rest bit of this, but thank you so much for joining us. If you're new, share this out. Let people know we've been kind of fluttering on the timeline, but we are finally in that terminal count and ready to go for this test. We're hoping to have a good 8-minute test, and we will be listening in here now.
T-minus 5 minutes, initiating TVC spin start.
Yeah, so at this point, they've basically initiated CAPU start, and basically those will be coming up on helium. They'll go into a what we call the wiggle test, which is where they'll gimbal the engines, and then so that's basically coming up here in just a couple of minutes. On the plus side of that, once we get into the engine starts.
T-minus 4 minutes, CAPU start, starting LO2 securing.
Okay, so LO2 is being secured now, so that they're really moving forward in the plus count here. Still roughly at T minus. .3 minutes 42 seconds. And so with that, we should be seeing the TV gimbal profile here in about half a minute or so. Basically at this point they've got the water system all turned on. You will see that in some of the views, and that'll basically take care of not only the heat coming off of the engines, but also dampen the tremendous amount of noise that'll be coming off. As mentioned earlier, the hydrogen burn-off igniters will come on at about 12 seconds.
T-minus 3 minutes, starting PSN 4.
The inertial navigation mode will be complete at about T-minus 10 seconds. And then basically the enable command for ALS at 9.2 seconds. And then we go into engine start roughly at 6 seconds. Those take about 5 seconds to come up to full operating pressures, and basically at that point the stage controller will be go for launch or go for test in this case at 2 seconds, and basically we go forward into our profile for the day.
All right, we're coming up on 2 minutes.
There's a gimbal test taking place now.
So we're at about T-minus 2 minutes until the test. I'm going to pull this banner down, give you that full view here as we await to the final countdown.
T-minus 2 minutes.
There's that 2-minute mark, and you can see the water suppression.
So the call was they just announced at T-minus 2 minutes, which is basically they have finished the gimbal test with the actuators, and they're bringing them back into the null position. And then basically at this point they basically are getting ready for powering up the engines. Again, core stage transitions to internal power at roughly 1 minute and 30 seconds out.
T-minus 130, switch to internal power.
And then if Reno gyro compass alignment converges at roughly 1 minute. And then we'll have the go for ALS. And we'll clear that polar shortly. At T-minus 33 seconds.
Quick question from Raymond in the chat. Are they planning on launching this from the structure? No, this is just a test stand. There will be no flying today.
Minus 1 minute. Following personnel report. Go, no go for ALS, AEA, PEA, HGA, REA, NEA, NTC. Vehicle and speed 2 systems are go for ALS.
And you, at this point, you see basically the water system has come on full bore.
So you heard that final go, no go on the last things. It's on internal power.
All right, T-minus 30, we're in ALS.
There's 30 seconds.
And you just got the official start of ALS. Next up is the hydrogen burn-off igniters come on at 12 seconds before T0.
So we're going to get to see the sparklers here again like we used to see in the space shuttle. This helps keep the extra few... there we go. Just the sparklers.
Okay.
And we have ignition.
And all personnel. We've got engine start and we're into the plus count. All personnel, please continue to monitor your systems and grass is in control.
$1.6 million pounds of thrust currently being fired by the 4 RS-25 engines. We are now on the clock hoping to see an 8-minute test. Just over 30 seconds now.
Plus 60 seconds starting TBC profile number.
So we're coming up on the point where they had shut down on the last test. Within the next 10 seconds, we'll have passed the last test. Seeing some movement there. And we have passed where they had shut down last time.
Now we've got a fire. Everyone go ahead and TS. TS. Okay, copy. Do you want me to hold off ATS? I copy that. I cancel it out.
You can see in that close-up, it looks like some of the blanketing around the engines has caught fire. We're at the 2-minute mark into the test. Still looks like 4 solid tests. Yeah, a lot happening, Raymond. 1.6 million pounds of thrust. So now they're doing some profiling of each of the engines, testing as if it was during flight. This is a great shot to see those stairs, so you can see how tall this structure is. And this structure goes over 10.5 stories, 114 feet into the ground, to be able to hold the thrust coming from this engine. If this structure was not there, we would be long into flight. 3-minute mark into the test. Great question in the chat about the pollution this is causing. It does cause some pollution, but this engine burns liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. So a lot of what you're seeing is actual clouds and condensation from it. Obviously, there is still some smoke into it, but... And with rockets, there's always going to be pollution.
Water's still good. That's a facility issue. And it's a vehicle.
If you are anywhere in the region near there, definitely take a look outside. You might see that plume following the test. Just got some information. Someone had asked how hot would it be under there.
4 minutes 30 seconds. I shoot in the FRT profile.
These are similar engines to the shuttle. During the shuttle program, it was 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit at the engine point. 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit is 3,315 degrees Celsius. So this rocket is built by NASA in partnership with where's the name? I'm blanking on it. I will find that after the launch. There's over 118 other companies that work on this rocket as well, Jacob. It's from 42 different U.S. states. Aerojet Rocketeer. That's who it is. There we go. That is
just over 5.5 minutes in the plus count.
5.5 minutes in test. About 3 minutes left. Looks like
6 minutes.
There's 6 minutes. Does have Boeing with it as well, yes. This is a test. This is a final green run test of the SLS rocket. This is the first time all 4 engines have been ignited,
Coming up on 7 minutes of the plus count.
simulating a full launch of the first stage. So this is a test. No launch today, but the next time we see this will most likely be during a launch. So there is always some dancing of the engines with the gimbals to help keep the rocket stable. They're also doing a bunch of different profiles to stabilize rotation during launch and different things there as well. So lots of things away. The temperature that someone was asking about here, if you were within 400 feet of this test, you would die from the temperature. That is how hot this is. That is why people are stationed a few miles away. But have to have large ear protection as well. So we're at 7.5 minutes in. We should be seeing shutdown here in 30 seconds or more. Now they could run a little longer, but we are coming up to
About 8 minutes.
800 feet and the sound will kill you. Thank you to our people in Discord. Marcus in Discord with the amazing information.
All right, so we're just over 8 minutes into the plus count.
We are past the 8-minute mark. And there's shut off.
All right. REA, can you verify REA on channel 16?
You can hear the applause.
REA on channel 16, safe engine shutdown, please. Safe engine shutdown. And you're in post shutdown standby, correct? Correct. Okay, all personnel, that takes us to page 656. All personnel go to page 656 to start the post-hot fire shutdown securing operations.
Well, congratulations to
personnel on page
Bill, as you said earlier, as we talked about earlier, the team was hoping to get at least 4 minutes of data. And we All right, they are proceeding with their shutdown procedures now. As we said earlier, the team was hoping to get at least 4 minutes of data, and they did get more than 8 minutes, excuse me. So they should have gotten what they need. The team will obviously need to look at that data, but based on what we've seen, Bill, tell us more about what it looked like to you.
Yeah, so they clearly got the full duration that they were after, which is really great news, and I think you heard the applause. They had, the command shutdown, which is exactly what they were looking for. They had no TCC violations, test commit criteria violations that would have prompted an early shutdown. So that was really good news. Clearly there's a lot of data that's going to have to be analyzed. The engineers got to see what worked and what didn't, or what needs to be tweaked and what doesn't. But that said, I think the applause says a lot about how the team feels, that they got through the test, and it looks pretty good right now. Yeah, so there was some, observed burning on the aft end. One of the things that Boeing had done after the last test was to apply a lot of extra cork to the aft end, because we didn't, unfortunately, with this test, right? We're not flying through the thin air as we ascend, and so we knew we were going to have more of that, and that was one of the reasons why they added that. They also put a tape covering over the top of that. We knew that if the tape gets hot enough, that adhesive layer below the tape surface is going to start burning, and so we clearly saw a lot of that. But there was nothing that prompted a shutdown early, which was really good news.
I'm just going to pull them back here for a minute. I'm listening in as we hear any updates. But keep an eye on Twitter. Keep an eye on our Twitter over at TLPN_official. We'll keep you up to date with anything we are hearing. But that is it. That was the test of SLS with Boeing, Aerojet, and everything. Let's take a listen in here.
The stage will be refurbished and sent by barge to our Kennedy Space Center in Florida. There, it will be stacked in the iconic vehicle assembly building with other elements of the SLS rocket, including the twin solid rocket boosters, which our teams have already begun stacking on the mobile launcher. The core stage and boosters will then be stacked with the upper stage and the Orion spacecraft. All of this work putting us on track to roll out to Launch Pad 39B for a liftoff later this year on Artemis I. We've got several other firsts on the horizon. This year, the first of our commercial lunar payload services, or CLPS missions, begin with 2 companies delivering instruments to the lunar surface. The golf cart-sized Viper rover will search for water at the moon's south pole. And a small CubeSat called Capstone will head to the moon, scouting the orbit to be used on later human missions. Meanwhile, the hardware for the next 2 Artemis missions, which will carry astronauts to the moon, is coming together. The Orion spacecraft for Artemis II is down at Kennedy undergoing assembly, and the spacecraft for Artemis III, as well as the rockets for Artemis II and III, are also being manufactured right now at Michoud. So that wraps it up for us here today. After a major milestone on America's return of astronauts to the lunar surface, a successful test of the core stage of the Space Launch System rocket. Up next, we'll be replaying the test, and we will have a post-test briefing in about 2 hours here on NASA television. We invite you to follow all of our progress online at nasa.gov/Artemis program, or join the conversation online with @NASA_Artemis and @NASA_SLS. Thank you for joining us, and go Artemis.
So there we go. We'll keep their feed up here as they do a replay of the test here. We're waiting to see if there's...
personnel.
We're going to turn that down there. There we go. So they're just doing a replay of what we just saw, some of the highlights there. You'll be able to watch that anytime on demand on our channel. We'll be getting that feed up here shortly. But yeah, a successful test. I saw a couple questions come into the chat here for it. These are testing. Yes, they were testing at the John C. Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. So if you're anywhere in the area, you might have heard the rumble there for it. We had heard them address a little bit about the engines and what we were seeing with the burning and the dancing, about that fire being there, some of the tape and the stuff, just because it wasn't actually launching. Saw a question from Michael, does SpaceX have any involvement in this? Not directly. They do share, they just signed an agreement actually today about safety in orbit and things. So I'm sure there's sharing of some safety information and kind of best practices. But no, this is a NASA rocket. SpaceX is not involved in the construction of this one. Yeah, absolutely. Congrats, NASA, to the Stennis team, to the Houston team, the Kennedy team. I'm sure is very excited to have seen this test look to be quite successful. And as they said, the next step is for it to head to the vehicle assembly building at Kennedy Space Center, where its 2 solid rocket boosters are stacked and awaiting for its arrival. And once we see that, things will really start to pick up as we see. If we went to the moon now, would we have to self-isolate for 2 weeks? Generally speaking, going to space, you actually do isolate, whether it's a pandemic or not. Just because they want to make sure everyone's healthy. They don't want someone sick up on the space station or different things there. So generally there is isolation already built in. With SpaceX, we have seen the family get quite a bit closer than we used to during like the shuttle era or the Apollo, where they were, seeing each other either through a glass wall or over kind of a waterway, kind of seeing each other. For the last SpaceX ones, we've been seeing the family right up to the vehicle to the point where they're even touching gloves. So there's definitely some new protocols there. But yes, there is definitely still isolation not related to the pandemic as part of the rocket industry and the astronaut industry. Saw a great comment from Philip just talking about what it's creating. The burning of the liquid hydrogen and the liquid oxygen creates H2O, which is why that cloud after did start raining for it. I read somewhere that they create like 750,000 gallons or something of water. It's a crazy amount to the point where it shows up on radar for it just because of what it's burning. So it's quite a clean burn. Obviously, there's still some burning. So yeah, there sure is still some little bit of pollution, but nothing near to be worried about like with the earlier rockets we've seen or other rockets that are currently in use in the industry. For it. But that's really going to wrap us up. Unless you have any more questions for me in the chat, we'll stick around for a couple minutes and hang out there. We're going to be doing a kind of recap of all this on the Launchpad News here on Monday, so make sure you come back to our channel for that. I'm dropping our channel link in the description or in the chat there. Make sure to click on that, hit the subscribe button. It really does help out our channel if you subscribe. We have a goal of hitting 500 before SN15 launches. So we've got SN11 coming up hopefully in the next couple of days, and then SN15 probably just a couple weeks away. Super Heavy BN1 is currently being stacked in the high bay with SpaceX and Boca Chica, and now we have SLS completing its last major test of the testing sequence before it gets stacked for it. Is the second stage at Kennedy already? That is a good question. I have not heard about that one yet, Robert. I know they had sent some stuff over to Kennedy already for it. They're still working. I believe they said earlier in today's broadcast that the paneling and everything is ready for the first capsule, and that they're currently doing like the assembly and testing of that. So we should be hearing more about that quite soon, as they do want to launch this by the end of this year. I believe they were targeting kind of October, November for it. Oh, thanks, Shar. That means a lot. But yeah, make sure you have subscribed to us over on YouTube. That's going to wrap it up for here at the Launchpad. My name's Zach. I'm the host here at the Launchpad. Thanks so much for being with us for our live testing of today's SLS test. We're going to leave you with the replay. We will see you next time. This is Zach with the Launchpad signing off.